The school bell rang. Kids rushed through the hall, laughing, pushing, shouting. But one girl walked slowly, head down, holding her books close to her chest. Her name was Tiana. She wore the same old shoes every day. Her hair was always tied back neatly, but not styled like the other girls. Her uniform was clean but faded. No one spoke to her. Some whispered when she passed by. Others just laughed. "She thinks she's smart," one girl giggled to her friend as Tiana walked by. "She looks like a ghost," another said, rolling her eyes. Tiana heard them, every word, every laugh, but she never replied. She just kept walking. In class, she sat in the last row, near the window, alone. Miss Carter, the science teacher, asked a question. "Who can explain the formula for velocity?" Hands went up. Not Tiana's. She knew the answer. She always did. But she stayed silent, because she knew the moment she spoke, someone would whisper something mean again. At lunch, she sat under a tree. Not in the cafeteria. She liked the quiet. She liked the way the leaves danced in the wind. But even there, they found her. A group of girls walked by, led by Jasmine, the most popular girl in school. Beautiful, confident, loud. "Still eating alone, freak?" Jasmine called out. Tiana didn't answer. One of the girls laughed. "You know, maybe if you smiled, someone might actually want to sit with you." Tiana looked at her food and quietly took another bite. Her hands trembled a little. Then Jasmine stepped closer and looked down at her. "You're always hiding, always quiet. What are you afraid of? Us?" Tiana slowly stood up. Her eyes met Jasmine's, but she didn't say a word. She just picked up her tray, turned around, and walked away. The girls laughed behind her. That night, Tiana sat in her room, looking at an old photo. It was her with her mom, both smiling. Her mom looked proud. Behind them was a karate dojo. A big trophy stood in front of them. "I miss you," she whispered. Her mom had passed away 2 years ago. Cancer, quick and cruel. Before she died, she told Tiana something that stuck in her heart. Power is not always loud. Sometimes it's silent. But when it comes out, it shakes the world. Tiana never forgot those words. She opened the drawer next to her bed. Inside was a red belt. Her final promotion before she stopped going to the dojo. "I promised I'd stop," she whispered. "But maybe it's time." She closed the drawer and stared out the window. The moonlight hit her face. Tomorrow would be different. The next morning, Tiana walked into school a little earlier than usual. The halls were still quiet. A few teachers passed by, but didn't notice her. She liked it better that way. Her head was still down, but her steps were steady. Her hands didn't shake today. Something inside her had changed overnight. But she kept that change hidden. Quiet, like always. As more students arrived, the noise returned. Laughter, gossip, and the sounds of shoes squeaking on the floor filled the building. Tiana stayed in the background, like a shadow no one wanted to notice, until Jasmine saw her again. "Look who's still walking like she doesn't exist," Jasmine said loudly, making sure everyone nearby could hear. A few students turned to look. Some laughed, some just shook their heads. No one said anything to stop her. Tiana didn't look up. But this time, she didn't walk away either. She kept walking, but slower, like she was thinking. Like her silence was not weakness anymore, but choice. Jasmine frowned. She didn't like it. "What? You can't talk? Or are you too good for us now?" she shouted again. Still no answer. This made Jasmine even angrier. "You know what, girls?" she said, turning to her group. "I heard a rumor about her. Want to hear it?" The girls leaned in. "Tell us." "She lives in that old apartment with no elevator," Jasmine said. "She walks all the way up to the 4th floor every day. That's probably why she always smells like sweat." The girls burst out laughing. But one girl in the group didn't laugh. Her name was Lena. She looked at Tiana, and for a second, their eyes met. Lena quickly looked away. She wasn't brave enough to say anything. Not yet. In class, things got worse. Mr. Howard, the math teacher, was out sick, so a substitute came in. A young man named Mr. Collins. He was friendly, and he wanted to make the class fun. "Let's try a little challenge," he said with a smile. "I'll write a tricky problem on the board. First person to solve it wins a small prize." Everyone leaned forward. The board showed a complicated equation. Jasmine raised her hand. So did two other boys. They all got it wrong. Then Mr. Collins looked around. "Anyone else want to try?" He noticed Tiana sitting in the back. "You there, in the last row. Want to give it a try?" All heads turned. Tiana froze. She hadn't expected this. Her heart started to beat faster. Her palms felt sweaty. She looked at the board. She knew the answer, but she also knew what would happen if she stood up. The whispers, the looks, the laughter. "Tiana, right?" Mr. Collins asked kindly. "Give it a shot." After a long pause, she slowly stood. Gasps filled the room. Some students laughed under their breath. She can't even talk properly." Someone whispered. Tiana walked to the board. Each step felt heavy, like the floor was pulling her down. But she picked up the marker. Her hands didn't shake. She looked at the numbers. Her mind went quiet. She could hear her mom's voice. "You are powerful, even if they don't see it." In one clean motion, she solved the problem. Mr. Collins blinked, then smiled. "That's correct. Very well done." The room went silent. Jasmine's face turned red. The other students stared. Some whispered again, but this time not with laughter. Lena looked impressed. Tiana walked back to her seat without saying a word. But this time, it wasn't because she was scared. It was because she didn't need to speak. The silence said everything. Later that day in the hallway, Jasmine bumped into her on purpose. Hard. "Don't think you're special," she hissed. Tiana just looked at her. And for the first time ever, Jasmine looked away. That night, Tiana pulled out her red karate belt again. She tied it around her waist and stood in front of the mirror. She didn't see the quiet, forgotten girl anymore. She saw strength. Hidden, yes, but ready. Tomorrow, something big was going to happen. She could feel it. And this time, the whole school would see it too. The next morning, the school felt different. Tiana walked through the main gate with calm steps. Her shoulders weren't slouched. Her eyes weren't on the ground. She didn't smile, but she didn't hide either. And people noticed. They didn't say it, but they felt something had changed. She wasn't invisible anymore. Whispers followed her down the hallway. "Is that the same girl who solved the problem yesterday?" She didn't even hesitate. She looked confident. Jasmine heard all of it. She stood by her locker, arms crossed, lips tight. The attention was moving away from her and toward her. The girl she called ugly. The girl she laughed at every day. "Time to remind everyone who's in charge," Jasmine muttered. At lunch, Jasmine walked up to the table where Tiana sat alone. But today, Tiana was sketching something in a notebook. She didn't look up. "Hey," Jasmine said loudly. The lunchroom went quiet. "I heard you think you're smart now. You think solving one math problem makes you special." Tiana looked at her but said nothing. "Oh wait," Jasmine smirked. "I forgot. You don't talk, right? What's wrong? Cat got your tongue." Tiana slowly closed her notebook. She stood up. Jasmine's friends moved closer, ready for more drama. Then Jasmine smiled darkly. "Let's do something fun. You and me." After school. Gym hall. Tiana raised one eyebrow. "You scared?" Jasmine teased. "Let's see what you're really made of." A few students gasped. Others whispered quickly. "Wait, is she challenging her to a fight?" "No way. Tiana will get crushed." She's so quiet, she can't fight. But Tiana didn't look scared. She nodded once, calm and steady. The bell rang. Classes passed like a blur. After school, the gym started filling up. Word had spread. Students wanted to see it. Tiana versus Jasmine. Beauty versus the girl no one noticed. At the back of the gym, Lena stood nervously. She didn't like what was happening, but she was curious. There was something different about Tiana now. Jasmine entered first, wearing tight gym clothes and sneakers. Tiana walked in a minute later. She wore a plain t-shirt, black sweatpants, and something else. A red belt tied tight around her waist. The crowd fell silent. One boy whispered, "Wait, is that a carrot belt?" Another replied, "Yeah, but what's she doing with that?" Jasmine laughed. "Oh please, you think wearing a belt makes you strong?" Tiana stepped onto the gym floor. Her face was calm, her eyes steady. "Come on then," Jasmine shouted, waving her forward. But Tiana didn't move fast. She took one step, then another, like a silent storm. And then, before anyone could blink, Jasmine rushed toward her. Tiana didn't flinch. She moved like water, smooth, fast. With a simple, perfect sweep, she spun and dropped Jasmine to the ground. Gasps filled the gym. Jasmine rolled over, shocked. Her mouth hung open. She wasn't hurt, but she was embarrassed. "What was that?" Someone yelled. "Did you see that move? Where did she learn that?" Jasmine stood up, angry now. She charged again. Tiana dodged, swift and silent. Then she did something no one expected. She stepped back and bowed, not to Jasmine, but to the watching crowd. "I don't need to fight you," Tiana finally said. Her voice was clear, soft, strong. "I didn't come here to prove anything to you." Everyone stared in silence. Then she turned to Jasmine. "But if you ever touch me again," she added, "you'll find out what else I've been hiding." She walked out of the gym. Not one person laughed. Not one person stopped her. Even Jasmine didn't speak. Lena watched with wide eyes. She clutched her notebook tight. She had just witnessed something no one would forget. The ugly girl, the one they teased, had more power than anyone imagined. But Tiana wasn't done yet. There was still one more surprise coming. Something that would make the whole school look at her differently. Something written on a piece of paper, sitting quietly in her backpack. The school buzzed with whispers the next day. Tiana had done something that no one expected. She didn't just fight back against Jasmine. She did it with a quiet strength that left everyone confused and fascinated. The gym was still filled with students talking in small groups. They were all trying to figure out who Tiana really was. What made her so different from the ugly girl they had once laughed at? Lena couldn't stop thinking about Tiana. She saw the calmness in her, the quiet confidence that had made Jasmine look like a fool. But there was still one question in Lena's mind. Where did Tiana learn to fight like that? Lena finally caught up with Tiana in the library the next afternoon. Tiana was sitting at a table, flipping through a book, completely at ease. It was like nothing had changed for her. Lena stood by the table, feeling unsure. She had always been the shy one, too scared to ask questions. But today, something felt different. She felt the need to understand the girl who had stopped Jasmine in her tracks. "Tiana," Lena asked, her voice hesitant. Tiana looked up and smiled softly. "Hey Lena, what's up?" Lena sat down slowly, unsure of how to start. She took a deep breath before asking, "How did you do that? How did you know how to fight like that?" Tiana closed her book and looked at Lena, her face serious but not unkind. She didn't seem surprised by the question. "I've been learning for a long time," she said quietly. "It's not just karate or fighting moves. It's something deeper. I've been taught how to defend myself and how to stay strong, no matter what." Lena was confused. "But why didn't you ever tell anyone? Why didn't you use it before?" Tiana smiled faintly, a small but knowing smile. Because, Lena, I didn't need to. People didn't see me before. They only saw what they wanted to see. They saw the ugly girl who didn't matter. So I kept it hidden. I had to hide it. I didn't want to make myself a target. Lena felt a sudden rush of understanding. She had been so blind before, so busy with her own fears, that she had never realized what Tiana had been hiding. It was like seeing a picture in the wrong light, and then suddenly, everything clicked into place. You were scared, weren't you? Lena said, looking down. You were scared of them. Tiana didn't answer right away. She thought about it, her fingers running lightly over the edge of her book. I wasn't scared of them. I was scared of being hurt again. But it wasn't just about physical pain. It was about how people see you, how they judge you, how they think they know everything about you just because of the way you look. Lena nodded. I get it now. But why the belt? The one you wore yesterday. Tiana's eyes flickered for a moment, and she paused before responding. Because I earned it. It's not just for fighting. It's a reminder. A reminder of how far I've come, of everything I've been through. Lena was speechless for a moment. She wanted to ask more questions, but she knew Tiana needed time. Time to explain, if she wanted to. Tiana stood up and put the book in her bag. It's not about proving anything to people like Jasmine. It's about proving to myself that I can stand up for who I am. As Tiana walked toward the door, Lena's voice stopped her. You're not ugly, you know. Tiana turned, a quiet smile on her lips. Thanks, Lena. But that's not really the point, is it? Lena nodded, finally understanding. It wasn't about beauty or being popular. It was about strength. Strength that didn't need to be loud or flashy. Strength that came from deep within. As Tiana walked down the hall that afternoon, she felt different. Not just because she had stood up to Jasmine, but because something inside her had shifted. She was no longer the girl who shrank in the shadows. She was no longer the one who let people walk all over her. She was the one who controlled her own story now. The one who could stand tall in front of anyone, even Jasmine, and not feel ashamed. But there was still one more thing left to do. One more piece of her story that needed to be told. That evening, when she got home, Tiana pulled out a small envelope from her bag. It was carefully sealed. She opened it and stared down at the paper inside. It was a letter. A letter from a college she had applied to months ago. A college that had told her, in their rejection letter, that she wasn't the right fit. The letter inside was different. It was an acceptance letter. She held the paper in her hands, staring at the words for a long time. And for the first time in a long time, Tiana smiled. The following day, Tiana walked into school with a new sense of purpose. Her heart was lighter, and there was a quiet confidence in her steps. She was no longer the girl who had been pushed aside, laughed at, or underestimated. She was someone different now, a force to be reckoned with. The school hallways, once filled with whispers and mockery, were now silent as people stepped aside when they saw her. There was a shift in the way the other students looked at her. The ones who once teased her now avoided her gaze, unsure of how to act. It was as if they had all suddenly realized they had been wrong about her. Tiana reached her locker, her fingers tracing the cool metal surface. She could hear the voices of a few girls behind her, Jasmine and her friends. She knew they were talking about her. There was no way they could forget what had happened in the gym. But this time, Tiana wasn't bothered. She didn't even feel the need to turn around. She knew her power now. It wasn't in fighting, or in the looks that people judged her for. It was in the knowledge that she was in control of her own destiny. As she closed her locker, a figure approached her. It was Lena, who had become her first true friend in a long time. "Hey, Tiana," Lena said, her voice soft but full of admiration. "You're different today. I mean, I've always known you were different. But now, it's like you found your strength." Tiana smiled at her. "I have," she replied, "and I'm not afraid to show it anymore." The bell rang, signaling the start of classes, but Tiana didn't rush. She stood there for a moment, taking in the stillness of the hallway. Everything had changed. As she walked to her next class, she felt the weight of the world lift off her shoulders. The past no longer held her back. The girl who had been laughed at, mocked, and ignored was now the one who held her head high, ready to take on whatever came next. She stepped into the classroom, and for the first time, no one looked at her with pity or scorn. They looked at her with respect. Jasmine, the girl who had once tormented her, sat in the back of the room, her gaze avoiding Tiana's. But Tiana didn't need Jasmine's approval anymore. She had won. And as the teacher called the class to order, Tiana took her seat, her heart full of quiet triumph. The old Tiana was gone. The new Tiana had arrived. The power was hers, and nothing, not even the whispers or the judgments, could take that away.